Customer Commerce Podcast, where technology's fast and biz is a blast.
In life and in business, time is precious. It's why customers stay or leave and why businesses succeed or fail. We're here to give a voice to everything that makes business, whether as a customer or as a CEO, easier and more rewarding. Welcome to the Customer Commerce Podcast. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Customer Commerce Podcast. I'm your host, Jess, and today we have a very special episode lined up. Joining me is none other than Nick Terrenzi, Chief Growth Officer of StoreConnect. Nick has traveled, which I found out, over 4 million miles across the globe for business, giving him a very unique perspective on growth and sustainability. And when I say sustainability, I mean longevity of businesses, not necessarily environmental. And of course, we're also joined by our branding extraordinaire, and he's becoming my podcast wingman, David Brier, here to sprinkle his wise and sometimes weird words of advice. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Jess.
Yo.
Good to see you, David.
Hi. Thank you for being a part of this, Nick. We briefly had a discussion beforehand, and you told me that information of you traveling over 4 million miles, which in Australia we do kilometers, but I know that miles is a very long amount of distance to cover. How many countries roughly do you think you've traveled to?
More than 100, easy. Yeah.
So
I've gone pretty much a lot of places where people don't go, and yeah, I probably now would not return to some of those places, but yeah, most were pretty fantastic. Wow. Yeah.
I want to kind of touch on those experiences in regards to business, because I'm sure most of them have been related to business, and you've been consulting for a very long time and you just have a lot of experience in this industry of e-commerce and overall business. So based on your experiences from traveling all around the world, working with different industries, having seen every facet of a business to manufacturing, sales, and fulfillment, I want to ask certain questions around the blind spots that inhibit the business's growth. So my first question is, what's one piece of advice you'd give to new business owners about ensuring their operations are built for longevity as opposed to a quick viral, burst of sales?
Yeah, I think that's when in meeting different business people or new entrepreneurs, everybody's looking for the quick hit, the how do I get instant money? And there's a lot of that on social media now. And I always like to tell, a bit of a story because of all the travel, and the travel has been so extreme over the years that people ask, well, why would you do such a thing? Right. And it always comes down to the people. So no matter what you hear about a country or, a culture or anything like that, which there's a lot of, things put out in the media that might be positive, negative, whatever, it comes down to when you meet people face to face, on the ground, no matter where I've been in the world, they're always fantastic. People are amazing. And I sort of relate that back to your question from a business standpoint, is that what's easily forgotten is the customer. What's easily forgotten is the people. And at the end of the day, because I went to so many different countries and so many different cultures, you look for things that are consistent. Like what can I ensure that I do every time to relate to these people? And it really comes back down to manners, right? And granting people importance. And that seems very simple. And I think that we've gotten way too complex in answering your question, it's way too complex. The simplicity is you need customers. So you're going to attract them and get those new customers coming in. But the profit and your longevity and everything is based on, are those customers going to become lifelong relationships? And, during COVID, I couldn't travel. And what I found was, it was like, my lifestyle sort of changed, and it was easier not to get on the airplanes. But then when the world opened up again, all those relationships that I had built over, almost 30 years, then started to reach back out and say, hey, can you come back? And, we miss you type thing. And that's lifelong relationship. So every business has to think with, it's that initial, like it costs a lot of money to get on airplanes and go meet people for the first time and so on and so forth, right? So it's very similar from a business standpoint. Getting that first customer, that marketing, in the beginning is very expensive. But if they stay with you for life, that next purchase, wow, that's so much more cost effective. And then them telling their friends how amazing that business is or how amazing the product is. Those last two things don't really cost you much. And that's really where your profitability, your longevity comes in. So you have to think with, I'm going to gain these new customers and I'm going to retain them for life and treat them so well, good manners, granting them lots of importance. And I think that for very simplicity also got lost and maybe got worse during COVID because, there was a lot of excuses for poor service and things like that. And all of us went to more of a online commerce or, it was already going that direction. But remember before COVID as well, because the service was poor in the brick and mortar stores, people were going online anyway. They go to the first, store, didn't find what they were looking for or had a bad sales experience or whatever. They went to another store, tried to buy it from somewhere else, had another bad experience, and then gave up and went online. That was super common. Then we had the pandemic, which made it worse. Okay, I need to buy things online. So we were driven online anyway. So if we don't think with that the commerce experience needs to be similar to being very well taken care of from a customer service standpoint, and in spite of it being virtual, then those customers, we tend to love good experiences, and we'll go back to that same experience over and over and over again. So, translating what would be that great relationship to online becomes the critical factor, I think. And that's the simplicity. It's very simple.
So it's almost like business owners need to invest in that kind of strong communication line with their customers kind of from the get-go.
100%.
Even though it might not pay off that week, that month, whatever, it'll definitely, as you keep kind of, making that as a priority, it creates a relationship, like you said.
I was just going to say that there's a mindset that I've seen the mature entrepreneur, they can think in the long term. They realize that this current transaction simply lays the foundation for giving them a compelling reason to come back for another transaction and the next transaction, which at the end of the day becomes customer lifetime value, CLV. And younger brands, younger companies can lose sight of that. Or flip side, and I'm talking from my own personal experience, what I've seen, sometimes if you have businesses that are just very much driven by the spreadsheet, they're what I call bean counters. They forget, wait a second, the bean counting is it's a metric that measures everything that led up to that person exchanging their beans. It's like it's not the causative element, it's the end result of. And so sometimes it can be really, I've seen companies derail when they've lost sight of that. And they're just like, how much revenue, and lost sight. Who are they serving? The people, right? It's people to people. There's people at the end of the day, because that's what's the other metrics reflect that.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point.
We all love to be very well taken care of, and we'll return to that restaurant or, the products that we love. We can all think of them, and we just become extremely loyal to those products, and we'll become loyal to that experience. And so if we can create that same, experience, customer loyalty, and so on in the e-commerce, in that virtual world, the customers will stay with you. And that's really where your longevity and, there you're going to have sustainability as a company.
And they'll also be more forgiving if you have a glitch. if a delivery doesn't happen as planned, or some component with regard to what they expected, the things fell short of that. If you have the foundation of that relationship, and it's transparent and it's giving and it's gracious and all the right qualities, they will be much more understanding than if you're just treated like a transaction. 1,000%. It's night and day. Night and day.
Of tolerance there for,
Yeah.
Of course you can't have this happen over and over, but if you had one little hiccup, people will still stay. You'll be okay. But you must make it through that first, transaction, that first meeting, right? You ever had, it's the old saying of you never get a second chance for that first experience, right? So first impressions are critical.
That's so true. We really do judge very much by the cover of things, even though it's like, oh no, it's what's inside. Well, if you have just that first moment, you look, are they clean? Is their website nice? Is their products, are they good quality? Is do the actual, whatever, waitresses, whomever, do they look like they shower and dress beautifully and, care for the business and what they work for and what they stand for?
I love when people shower. I think that's a very, very civilized thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's just like Nick was saying, it's manners, right? Okay, beautiful. And so my next question, Nick, is what are the biggest misconceptions business owners who are making the move from analog business sales to e-commerce have about driving sales in today's marketplace?
I think there's the misconception that whole experience that we just described is somehow not important in the e-commerce world. So, back in the day where we used to, I used to have a merchandising job and, working with oil companies and convenience stores and this type thing. And we, spent tremendous amount of time in the store to first figure out how do we get the customers in, and then based on how the store looked or that whole experience, how do we keep them? And so there was all kinds of testing and gimmicks and different things that we did to make sure that customer stayed in the store as long as possible, because we know if we can keep them in the store as long as possible, they'll buy other things. They won't just buy what we got them in the store for. So that whole, how that experience was inside the actual store needs to translate online. So there's a misconception of somehow those two things don't match. And in reality, you just get that same experience. And of course it won't be exactly, but you just take that concept. Okay, how do we do this? How do we create that customer experience online to where, yes, the customers show up to the site and they love the site and they'll stay longer on the site and they'll look for more things and they'll buy more than, what they originally came for. And how do we create that experience? I think that's a huge misconception. And looking at it now, it's like, yeah. The other thing I think is important in that is that the stores themselves did over time, that whole customer service started to decline. And this is before the pandemic or before going online, which drove customers online. So if the online experience then becomes transactional, as David was saying, right? So you have more of a transactional and you're not treating the customers well online, that'll drive them back to the stores. And so you have this sort of, back and forth. But if you can create online that beautiful environment where they, love the products, your site is more the go-to, they're going to stay with you for life, because in the highest percentage of, let's say, emotion, when you survey customers for customer experience, there's a lot of emotion tied to the fact that they're not getting a good customer experience either online or in person, and they'll keep going back to the sites and the stores that treat those customers well. So that's the key.
I'm just realizing that's a very obvious point too when you actually say it, because I think there's also a misconception that e-commerce is way easier than having a store. Like, as in, like that's the way to make $1 million in overnight. But actually, I mean, the fact that you know exactly what it takes, and we have a business, Store Connect, that literally focuses on that, because it's not just like open a Shopify account and then just wait, you know what I mean? And I think there is a bit of marketing, and there's a lot on social media that projects that kind of, easily make million bucks in a week by running your own ecom business. Do you think that's like, do you think it is somewhat easier than having an in-store, physical location? Or do you think when you really add up all the points that you need to do online and get all worked out, is it kind of the same amount of work? What do you think?
I think they are different, but I think that if I was building a new e-commerce store right now, one of the things I would do is go to brick and mortar stores to see and study what the customers are doing, just to get that experience. And then with the mindset that, okay, how is this going to translate online? So it's almost like you need to have both points of view, and then obviously study other sites, the ones that are most popular, and find out why. There is homework or research to be done. But if you're only looking at it from the viewpoint of online, then you're going to miss things that, customers enjoy in the store. So you got to figure out how these things translate. Is one harder than the other? I think it is if you don't do the research. I think that's the missing step, is that you've got to go do the homework. If everybody who did an online business could make $1 million, then everybody would just do that. So that idea can't be true, right? So there is technology to it, and doing your homework, doing the research, and going back to our earlier segment on the whole customer service and that whole relationship becomes critical. But you need to understand, how's that done in the store, and then how's that done online, and who does it best, and really look at those things, research it, and then choose. We're obviously biased for StoreConnect, on Salesforce being, okay, this solution together, from a business standpoint, here's your whole business, all on the same trust model, working together so that you can do, all that we're talking about, customer service wise. Subscriptions become critical because we want them to continue to buy, giving them rewards and loyalty points, and retaining them, and just creating such a great experience that they tell all their friends. That's what it's all about. So we need a system, end-to-end complete solution that does that, and then you can be successful.
And it's also looking at who's served. And what I mean by that is, and it's so easy, especially with online businesses and e-commerce, it's like, okay, we want to increase efficiency. Okay, who's that? Who are we talking about now? Are we talking about increasing efficiency for us, the business, in which case we might want to cut corners, whatever? Or are we looking at increasing the efficiency for the shopper, who's our customer, right? Or is simplifying things? Is simplifying things for us, where it's actually going to result in a compromised experience for the customer, or is it simplifying things for the shopper? It's just kind of like looking, not ever losing sight and taking for granted this entire business exists to serve someone, to provide something, but just to meet the expectation of, okay, I'd like to go there and I'd like them to have an inventory, what I'd like. Okay, that's nice. How do we now make that better? Can we make it simpler to find it? Can we alert them when it's out of stock? Can we reward them immediately with rewards points? Can we, loyalty, etc.? These are all little things that are very much built into a lot of what StoreConnect is all about.
Yeah, great point. Okay, and then my last question for you, Nick, is what is the number one thing that businesses need to focus on that they can actually implement today to actually set themselves up for long-term success?
Say number one, we have touched on it to a varying degree, but I would do this one exercise, which you can do right now, and that is become your own customer. So you basically set it up to where you're your own customer. You go to your site, you get the experience. You're kind of like the mystery shopper, but on your own site, and really study what you would change or improve about each step, that your customer's going through. And if you can take that, fresh look at yourself, fresh look at your own business, and this is something I would do on a regular basis. You obviously can do it today. 4 weeks from now, I would do it again. I would at least do it monthly and ensure that, that experience every step of the way, is a tremendous experience that does retain those customers.
Boom. Mic drop. If I could drop this mic, but it's very expensive, so I'm not going to. But
bad idea.
That's all I had for you, Nick. That's pretty. I reckon there are some nuggets there. What do you reckon, David?
I think that we've had some definite potty nuggets dropped.
Exactly. No, but it's really cool to just simplify things, really, because in the e-commerce world, it can just get so complicated. I mean, that's just, I'm pointing out the obvious here, but that's why we've created something. Well, Michael and you guys have really created a workable solution that simplifies things, and there doesn't have to be a bajillion plugins and all these kind of things. If you're really looking at what actually needs to be done, what serves,
Yeah. 100%.
Great. Well, thank you, Nick, for your time. Do you have anything that you want to add at all?
No, I think that last statement, that's the critical factor. Simplicity especially for a small business. Business owners just don't have the time. Simplifying the tech stack to where it's covering the main points of gaining new customers, then having that super great experience that they'll remain loyal and tell their friends. So you have basically new customers coming in, they stay and continue to buy through subscription, and then you're getting referrals. If you have those three things as a small business, you're going to be just fine.
Love it. More nuggets being sprinkled in this episode. Beautiful, Nick. Well, thank you again for coming. I'm sure we'll have you on the podcast in the near future. Listeners, we will see you next week for another episode. But until then, David?
Stay customary and stay commercey.
Boom. All right, guys, have a beautiful day. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you had an awesome time, leaving you with ideas on how to improve your business and wow customers. If you'd like to leave a real customer's story, head to the link in our show notes and cuss away. Love the show? Please subscribe and leave a review, because that enables us to help more businesses in building real relationships with customers and grow more rapidly. See you next time.